Edward Timpson to move the motion.
Thank you very much, Mr. Hosey. And I'm delighted to have you in the chair, as always, for this really important and, I hope, enthralling debate at the end of the day on physical education in our schools. And in doing so, I do refer members to my entry in the Register of Interests. And can I begin by thanking personally all the 386 so far members of the public who, in just 48 hours, took the time to respond to the survey distributed by the Chamber Engagement Team to share their experiences and ideas in relation to PE as a core subject, along with students from the Bishop of Hereford's Bluecoat School who, as part of the Pupils to Parliament programme, run by the former Children's Director, Dr. Roger Morgan, OBE, also contributed their views and proposals. I'm extremely grateful, and I think it demonstrates both the significant and rising interest in this crucial aspect of school, as well as the growing recognition that the status quo isn't delivering for children in the context of the modern world in which we live, particularly for those with special education needs and disabilities and from more deprived backgrounds. And I'm also grateful to the Minister, who I know from our early morning runs together is just as passionate about the power of PE as a springboard to a lifelong love of sport and physical activity as me. Indeed, the government's ongoing commitment, which I'm sure he will refer to, the 320 million a year primary PE and sport premium, the 2019 manifesto pledge to invest in primary PE teaching with the new £30 million worth of funding to also help schools open their sports facilities are all demonstrations of the desire to see improvements in participation, performance and prolonged engagement into adulthood of physical activity and sport amongst children of school age and beyond. However, as the PE Taskforce that I chaired last year laid bare, and can I thank Sue Wilkinson, the Chief Executive of the Association for Physical Education, and her team for their support with that task force, this is happening at a time when children's physical fitness, their mental health and well-being are all heading in, unfortunately, the wrong direction. The Lords Select Committee report, a National Plan for Sport, Health and Wellbeing that was published in December 2021, cited data from the Active Lives annual survey, which showed that 2.3 million children in England, and I emphasise I'm also speaking about England and English schools, almost a third, 31.3% of the child population are doing less than 30 minutes of activity a day. And it also found that girls and children from deprived socioeconomic backgrounds are the most likely to have lower activity levels. And we've seen, too, a growing trend of obese children in both reception and Year 6, leading to 1 in 5 secondary school pupils falling into that same category. And perhaps not unsurprisingly, since the pandemic, the situation has gotten worse, with a surge in numbers of children being referred to mental health services, including a rise of 77% in relation to severe cases. And at the same time, there is evidence, Mr. Hosey, of PE getting sidelined by some schools as a nice-to-have rather than a must-do, and reducing PE time in order to focus on catch-up in other areas, which is understandable, but is to the detriment of PE. And it's worth remembering, too, that even before COVID, the situation was deteriorating. For example, as part of their research review series, Ofsted published their PE paper just last week that revealed reductions in time allocated to PE of up to 20% since 2013 at Key Stage 3 and 38% at Key Stage 4. And if we add in increasingly sedentary lifestyles, gaming, phone addiction, sleep deprivation, these are all turning children and young people off physical movement and the dire consequences it has both for their own health but also the health of the nation. And if we're serious about taking on the ever-growing pressure of the NHS and what's the pressure that's going on it, and instilling a habit of physical activity for life, that would be a good way of starting to alleviate that pressure. As the Lords Committee also said in their report, schools are the place where attitudes towards physical activity track into adulthood. And the even better news, Mr. Hosey, is we can actually do something about it. And that's where physical education comes in. Now, I'm not, I hope, naive enough to think that making PE a core subject will on its own achieve that laudable objective. As a father of 4, I know I have a responsibility to lead by example, by encouraging my own children to find ways that they can enjoy keeping fit and active into adult life. Indeed, my 18-year-old son recently announced to me that he wants to join me on my next London Marathon this October, so I must be doing something right. My 17th one, I think it is. But having been privileged to be Children's Minister myself, rarely have I come across a specific policy with a modest price tag that has a very real prospect of changing the trajectory of so many young people towards a healthier and more fulfilling life. Because the evidence is staring us in the face. It's no coincidence that the very best schools, both state and independent, have for many years already understood that the holistic intertwining of PE into their school offer reaps rewards in so many different ways, physically, socially, emotionally, and yes, academically too. Yes, I'll give way to my friend.
You're absolutely right to highlight the points that he already has now about combating and reducing childhood obesity. But on the point that he's making, and I congratulate him for bringing this debate, which I think is very worthwhile, and I fully support what he's saying, there is a greater social benefit to children, particularly from deprived backgrounds who do not have the life advantages of children from more affluent backgrounds in playing sport, coming together, learning team skills, and enjoying being part of a team and having the social fabric of being part of sport. And that's something that is recognised quite rightly in much of the state sector, good performing state schools and the private sector. And so I think the benefit of what he's proposing would be to make sure that all children have that access and opportunity, and those opportunities to gain those wider parts of education that will bring their lives along further. And we want to reflect on that, but I hope that the Minister has taken note of those comments.
Good terms. My old friend for Central Suffolk and Norfolk, Ipswich, that's the one, is absolutely right in that the one of the benefits that I saw when I was responsible for school sports as Children's Minister is some of the programmes in some of the inner cities, children who don't always have access to facilities, who are gaining so many of the elements that other children take for granted, that sport, physical activity and the precursor to that, good physical education, can bring to them and their lives, not just in terms of the participation, but also, and which I'll come on to, Mr. Hosey, about their life skills, their confidence, their sense of achievement and purpose, and where that can lead. And right at the end, I will mention an individual that you will all know, who falls right into that category. And it segues very much into the celebrated 19th century educator and head teacher actually at one of my former schools, Edward Thring, who was ahead of his time in observing that when it comes to physical education, the aim was to produce a wholeness and harmony within and beyond the classroom, in work and in play, and in body, intellect and soul. Because an academically rigorous curriculum isn't at odds with having PE at its heart, we can see it as the only subject that educates through the physical domain. The evidence has never been greater that it actually helps enhance academic performance, not forgetting concentration and behaviour too. For example, in 2015, the University of Texas in Austin published a paper entitled Active Education, Growing Evidence on Physical Activity and Academic Performance, which reviewed 39 separate studies and unanimously found that physical activity can have both immediate and long-term benefits on academic performance. Almost immediately after engaging in physical activity, children are better able to concentrate on classroom tasks, which can enhance learning. Let's take an example here in England, Sandal Castle Primary School in Wakefield, where physical education is at the heart of their curriculum, and it's seen as a vital and critical priority driver for school improvement too. They have 2 members of staff who have the afPE Level 5 certificate in primary school physical education specialism that's vital in raising standards within primary school physical education teaching and learning. And the breadth of curriculum opportunity on offer within the extended school day that they have has ensured that attainment in core subjects continues to be well above the national average, with, in 2019, 82% of children achieving national standard in reading, writing and maths, compared with the England average of 65%, and progress measures in English in particular are well above the national average, with reading at plus 3.5 and writing at plus 3.1. No coincidence, you might think, Mr. Hosey. At this stage, it's probably sensible to explain exactly what PE is and how it interrelates with physical activity and sport. The structure of the national curriculum is based on 12 subjects classified as core and foundation subjects. English, mathematics and science are core subjects across all key stages, with PE being the only foundational subject across all those key stages. And the purpose of studying PE, as outlined in the national curriculum, is as follows: a high-quality physical education curriculum that inspires all pupils to succeed and excel in competitive sport and other physical demanding activities. It should provide opportunities for pupils to become physically confident in a way that supports their health and fitness. The stated aims of the national curriculum for PE are to ensure that all pupils develop competence to excel in a broad range of physical activities, are physically active for sustained periods of time, engage in competitive sports and activities, and lead healthy, active lives. So PE is essentially the planned, progressive learning that takes place in the timetabled school curriculum, involving both learning to move and moving to learn, the context for the learning being through physical activity. Sport is the structured learning that takes place beyond the curriculum, often within school settings, out of our hours, or in the community. But there's clearly a symbiotic relationship between all three, with PE being the foundation in which all other physical activity and sport flows. And as Ofsted point out, a child with lower levels of motor competence may be less inclined to participate in physical activity and sport. Hence, getting it right is so fundamental. Writing in the British Medical Journal on the 2nd of March of this year, Michael Craig Watson and Dr. John Lloyd from the Institute of Health Promotion Education observed that in addition to the current low levels of physical activity in the UK, there are also stark inequalities in the levels of physical activity within the population. There are large disparities in physical activity participation rates in relation to age, disability, ethnic group and gender, and that physical activity should not just be for the elite or, for example, individuals of a certain age or ability, going back to the point made by my honourable friend, but should be actively promoted to the whole population. Schools have an important part to play in developing health literacy, and that includes physical education, which is an important and essential part of the curriculum for all pupils of all ages. Now, in calling for this debate, Mr. Hosey, I'm also realistic that PE won't miraculously appear as a core subject overnight. Further work is needed to ensure we have the capacity, the culture and the commitment within the school system for it to have the desired effect. Some have also legitimately raised issues about curriculum time, assessment challenges, recruitment and the quality of PE teaching at primary level. The latter of those, the government is already underway in addressing, and I would humbly suggest that when it comes to recruitment, the Department for Education should use the recent review by Ofsted of PE to help improve accountability and inspection of PE and the use of the premium, as well as develop a coherent standards and assessment framework for PE that would satisfy a core status in the future. And that assessment could include, as suggested by Professor Joe Harris from Loughborough University, how PE reduces that burden on the NHS. And on curriculum time, if the leadership, innovation and desire is there, PE has the flexibility to be more incorporated into the wider curriculum and woven into the school day. If you take St Gregory Primary School in Suffolk, where the head teacher, Daniel Woodrow, has introduced a whole school 10-minute wake and shake style activity first thing, and later a 15-minute daily mile, something I know the Minister is very keen on and these days runs pretty decent times on too, as well as 3 PE lessons every week. And crucially, we shouldn't see the curriculum as sacred and be dogmatic about its constitution. In my view, the right move to better vocational representation at school and college is a testament to that. It has and should continue to evolve over time so as to best reflect the current and foreseeable demands and needs of society. And we quite rightly place high value on all children having good knowledge and application of maths, English and science. But surely the time has come to start to recognise the equal value of having good knowledge and application of PE as one of the cornerstones of setting up a child with some of the core attributes they will need for life. So let's build on some of the excellent practice and leadership already out there, learn from the outstanding schools that have already made PE essential to their delivery of an excellent education, and start to build the base of expertise and understanding across our school workforce. Let's set an achievable target of a great PE teacher in every primary school and make CPD more effective. So the transition from a foundation to a core subject up to Key Stage 2 can be where we begin. Let's, as Nick, who replied to my survey, said, assess the quality of the delivery through internal and external engagement, as well as improve the real on-the-ground evidence from the likes of the United Learning Trust, who are piloting PE as a core subject right across their whole family of schools. Because this is what children and the public want too. Pupils from the Bishop of Hereford's Bluecoats told me that they wanted more time for PE and sports in the curriculum, including different after-school and lunch timings to help find that time. And a survey of adults conducted by the Youth Sport Trust found that the majority of the general public wanted more physical activity in schools and would support enhancing physical education to a core subject status. And almost two-thirds of respondents strongly or tended to agree that PE should be a core subject in the national curriculum, with 80% agreeing that there should be more opportunities for people of all ages to be physically active at school. Before I give others a chance to contribute to the debate, Mr. Hosey, I just want to mention swimming and water safety, and in particular the statutory elements of PE, whereby every 11-year-old is required to be able to swim competently, confidently and proficiently over a distance of at least 25 metres. Now, despite this being the case since 1994, this requirement, we still have 1 in 3 children, or around 200,000 a year, leaving primary school not being able to do that. Now, I find this astonishing, as well as worrying, and lends further credence, I believe, to the need to take swimming as an essential life skill even more seriously. So I hope the Minister will use the funding already announced to look at improving access to facilities, including pop-up pools, for example, and also better scrutinise this aspect of PE so that we can ensure that all children get what they are entitled to. Now, I am, of course, aware from the Government's response to the Lord's report that there are no immediate plans to recategorise PE as a core subject. But I don't think it's giving away any state secrets, Mr. Hosey, just to say that over the last few weeks I've had some both enthusiastic and encouraging conversations with other ministerial colleagues in a position to make things happen. But there'll also be those who want to put it off because it's not a priority, it's too difficult to do, or they simply aren't interested. But as I said earlier in my remarks, there are very few straightforward policy changes that sit on a Whitehall desk carrying such a clear need, evidential basis, public support and potential for reaching a far-reaching impact as this one. And as Jason Robinson, who I alluded to earlier but didn't name, OBE, the former England Rugby Union World Cup winner and British Lion, has said, physical education was a vital part of my life growing up and gave me so much, playing an instrumental role in the success I went on to achieve in my career. PE has a unique power to inspire, but too often isn't taken seriously enough. The time for change has come for PE to become a core subject in every school, rightly put alongside other key subjects to ensure that the next generation of our young people are given better opportunities. So if the Government were therefore able to accept, in principle at least, the recommendations of the afPE Taskforce, the Laws Committee and others that are centred around PE becoming a core subject, it's no exaggeration to say, Mr. Hosey, that we would be taking the lead in our absolute commitment to the development of healthy bodies and healthy minds for all children, whatever their background. And if we have the will, or should I say will, we can have the way to make that happen. PE at the heart of school life.
The question is that this House has considered physical education as a core subject in schools. Kim Leadbeater.
Thank you, Mr. Hurley, and can I thank the Honourable Member for Edinburgh for securing this debate today. It's not often I get really excited in this place, but today is one of those days, because this is a subject close to my heart, and I've got a background in sport and physical activity and health and wellbeing, having lectured in these subjects for over a decade and worked both in primary schools, delivering exercise sessions to young children, including the aforementioned Wake Up, Shake Up, and in a secondary school PE department. Based on that experience, I strongly believe that PE should have a much more central role in the curriculum. In my view, successive governments have missed the chance to improve the health and well-being of the nation by adopting a holistic and preventative approach and placing an emphasis on educating young people about the importance of physical activity, what it means to have a healthy lifestyle, and ensuring they adopt healthy, enjoyable exercise habits from an early age. With alarming figures relating to childhood obesity, diabetes, and a range of other health conditions, along with serious concerns around children's mental health, we have got to take a more preventative and long-term approach when it comes to health and well-being. And for me, the provision of high-quality PE in our schools should be a fundamental part of this. Now, don't misunderstand me, the provision of good quality PE is not the only solution to these problems. As the Right Honourable Member alluded to, we also have to look at a wide range of other things, such as active travel, active families, active communities, grassroots sports provision, nutrition, and addressing the barriers to being more active, be they real or perceived. But the importance of young people's access to good quality and wide-ranging physical education as an important part of addressing some of these serious health issues, which is why I think PE should be a core subject. I accept it can't happen overnight, and we do, of course, have to consider the implications for the broader curriculum, but what we should be doing straight away, as the Association for PE says, is to give PE a higher priority, with children spending more time on physical activity, including aiming to have a highly trained PE teacher in every primary school within a few years. As the Times Educational Supplement reported recently, by having high-quality, properly resourced and immovable PE provision in our schools, we encourage children and young people to adopt lifelong physical activity habits, which will reduce the prevalence of a range of chronic health conditions and, in turn, take some of the pressure off the NHS, which we all know is bursting at the seams. The National Plan for Sport, Health and Wellbeing, discussed in the House of Lords recently, noted that attitudes towards physical activity track into adulthood. In short, by exposing children to a wide variety of PE options and enabling them to develop healthy habits from a young age, we help to create a generation of healthy adults. And the benefits of high-quality PE provision don't stop at the physical. The skills that children learn from PE are many: perseverance, resilience, collaboration, teamwork, initiative, confidence, to name just a few. They are skills which help young people to flourish in education and in life. And the great thing about physical activity is that there is something for everyone, whether that's competitive sport, dance, gym, group exercise, running, and everything in between. There's something for everyone, boys and girls, men and women. And on that note, I'm pleased to be here providing a female perspective in today's debate. I had two very good female PE teachers who were instrumental in inspiring me to adopt physical activity habits for the rest of my life, including a 30-year hockey career, which sadly only came to an end as a result of the pressures of this job. You know, those role models are really important, and that's why PE on the curriculum, you know, should be a core subject at the heart of our education system. But as well as PE on the curriculum, it's also important to look at how we can embed physical activity into the education system as a whole. The Creating Active Schools framework, designed in part by the Yorkshire Sport Foundation, is a good example of this. It encourages all stakeholders, from local authorities to school leaders and pupils, to play a role in embedding physical activity in the school's ethos. So, to finish, I'm really pleased to take part in this important debate today and to have the opportunity to speak about a subject so close to my heart. And I would offer to work with colleagues across the House on taking this agenda forward. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Hosey. It's a pleasure to serve in your chairmanship yet again in Westminster Hall, and I want to congratulate my rival friend for Edinburgh for securing this very important debate. And I thought both his speech and the Honourable Lady from Batley and Spen were fantastic in outlining the absolute reasons why physical education needs to be much more seriously taken, particularly in primary school in curriculum time. Now, Mr. Hosey, irony is not lost on me. I'm quite aware of this overly large circumference that I have around my waist at this moment in time, and that the irony is not lost on me that obviously for me to be talking about physical health, I should lead by example. But what I can say is that PE is absolutely essential to help tackle issues such as childhood obesity, which are sadly all too prevalent in the great city of Stoke-on-Trent and in Kids Rev and Talk, which I'm also proud to represent. And there's a number of different factors for that. But definitely one of the challenges that is faced
is that for all too often, in the advancement of wanting to secure students being better with their literacy and numeracy, which are absolutely critical and important to improving life outcomes and chances of pupils in my area, that has therefore suffered on the physical education side all too often as well. Now, I am the first in my family to be the beneficiary of a private school education, something I'm very proud of. My parents worked very hard, made many sacrifices to give me the head start in life that they simply felt they didn't get through their own education. And people always have asked me, what's the major difference between a pupil from a state school and a private school, having been a state school teacher for the last 8.5 years before I entered this place? And the answer is simple. Even though these schools, these private schools, are producing fantastic academic results, they heavily invest their time, the money that they get in, yes, from parents, I understand that is an advantage, but also their energy into giving those children a rounded education, not just through things like debating and lambda and drama, but physical education. I remember through my own education that Wednesday from 1 o'clock was games for the entire year group, where we often have a variety of football, hockey, rugby, netball and many other sports available to us for 2 to 3 hours, meaning that we were getting that high-quality physical education from fantastic teachers like Mr. McCollin, who I still dread and fear to this day. And when I went back only 12 months ago to see him, still look down and call him sir because of the fear that he brought into me when it came into being disciplined. And perhaps Mr. Speaker might need to have a word with him to finally get me behaved in the chamber. But ultimately, it was teachers like him who inspired me into rugby, a sport I'd never played before until I went and started at 11 years old and was delighted to end up having a very successful career, even ending up being paid whilst I was at university to play rugby union for a certain period of time. And it's, you know, that type of support network. And as the Honourable Lady for Batley and Spence said, the teamwork, the learning, the camaraderie that you build with your colleagues, the resilience to when you take a knock and get back up, when you have a defeat, even if you think you didn't deserve it. It's those type of things that are inspiring. And that is why we need to do a much better job ensuring that children in state schools are getting access to that. And, you know, I look, for example, in Stoke-on-Trent in 2019-20, we featured among the top local authorities for having high levels of childhood obesity. 27.7% of children were either overweight or obese. And if you looked at Kids Grove and Talk, it was 27% of Year 6 children obese and 19% overweight. These are scary statistics that have a huge impact. And as someone who has been quite open in recent times about my own mental health struggles, I absolutely understand the impact of not having a poor diet and a lack of exercise can have on your mental health. And that will see, it's no shock to me that high levels of obesity are also leading to long waiting lists with CAMHS as well. And when I see that in the city of Stoke-on-Trent, the adults population have real issues with asthma, have real issues with heart conditions, again, it's quite obvious that there is clearly a link to a lack of physical activity at the earliest stages. And we talk about in this place those first 1,001 days of a child's life, the most critical in terms of impairing knowledge, nurturing them to grow up. But that also comes from a physical aspect as well. So ultimately, if I look at certain things like Kids Grove Sports Centre, this was closed back in 2017. Thanks to the government's town deal funding and Newcastle and Lyme Borough Council, we've been able to refurbish and reopen in July 2022 the sports centre, bringing swimming back to this town where, as I say, record high levels of obesity and over children who are overweight. We're bringing a gym that's going to be run by the Kids Grove Sports Centre community group, so every pound that is spent in it stays in that community centre for the benefit of that local community. Alongside that, we've invested in a pump track at New Chapel Rec, which has got kids on their BMXs, their scooters, their rollerblades and a variety of other wheelie machinery that they're getting around on. It's getting them out and about. And when I drive past it on a weekly basis and see tens, if not hundreds of children on a daily basis out enjoying that facility, you can see the benefit of that. And for the mere sum of £100,000 for that town deal, I think it's already delivered over and above what it was invested into that area. Having things like Cluffle Bowls Club nearby, having the 3G AstroTurf pitch installed at the King's Church of England School through the town deal funding, FIFA standard 3G that's going to get not just kids during the day, but we've opened it up and did a deal with the school that the community can use it in the evening at the weekends. This is a sports village complex that we're trying to bring to local areas, so there's no excuse as to why anyone can't access some good, high-quality physical education. And, you know, it's absolutely... The last thing I want to say, Mr Hosey, is that we have some great people already in our city doing fantastic work. We have groups or companies like Be Active who were established in 2013 by brothers Ben and Bobby Mills, and they offer an innovative approach to physical education and Ofsted registered schools and holiday sports clubs. They have extended services beyond children's PE to include gentle exercise for older people, birthday parties, celebrations, special events and community sessions, to name a few. And they've even got this great app where parents can do activities with their kids at home and record it and have it marked and assess as to how well they're doing, and actually had them come to the office. And let's just say there's a lot of work to do in my part. My daughter and my son, I'm sure, will be much better. And they've become Stafford and Cheshire's leading provider of sports and physical activity, supporting 75 primary and secondary schools to deliver PE. But there is one challenge that's in their way, and it's the PE and sports premium, because even though that money they do get, because we don't have it secured long term, because it's almost an annual bid-in, there's the insecurity whether or not that fund's even going to exist and whether, therefore, that business can carry on. So Ben wants me to say from Be Active, can we have a long-term settlement of that fund to make sure that people like Ben's companies can go into the right way? I'm happy to give way to my old friend.
Edward Timpson.
Very grateful. I couldn't agree more with his last comment about the premium, which I was privileged to help set up in my time at the Department of Education, and delighted that it's still going. But that long-term funding makes a significant difference to schools' ability to really bed in some of the practical improvements that they need in the way that they teach PE within their school. But don't we also need confirmation from the government in relation to school games organisers by, I think, the 7th of April, so that they can continue their excellent work in relation to inter- and intra-school competitions, which have been so successful over the last 10 years.
Thank you very much, Mr. Hosey. I couldn't agree with my right honourable friend more. You know, this is so important. Again, the benefit of the private schools, you have the inter-school cup. So we should have inter-school competitions. It was the highlight of my week, knowing I could get out of maths halfway through the lesson in order to go and play against another local school in a rugby match, or against another house when we were doing the school cup games. You know, this is so important to breeding that confidence and that motivation for young people within our education sphere. So that long-term funding needs to be approved. We cannot have year-on-year uncertainty with primary schools and the providers who are doing this great work externally. The final thing, Mr. Hosey, and I will be very brief, is that we need an extended school day. I bang on and on about this. I know I'm going to embarrass the Parliamentary Private Secretary for the Department for Education, sat behind the Minister, the Honourable Member for Wantage, is also an advocate of this when he was on the Education Select Committee, and they sucked him into the Department, probably to shut him up maybe, I don't know. But now he's in the Department, he can tell them loud and clear that we need that extended school day, because not only does it keep kids off the streets, not only does it make those most vulnerable kids, by the way, who feel safe in their school building because it's a safe place they know, around, surrounded by adults that they trust. But it also means that whether or not there needs to be catch-up, those other pupils or the whole school can enjoy good quality physical education if there is going to be a challenge with fitting it in within the current existing normal curriculum time. The extended school day is happening already in the private school sector. It's unfair that it's not happening in the state school sector, and it's unfair on parents who are having to give up work 2-3 hours earlier than they should, having lower incomes than they should deserve as well, in order to go and pick up their loved ones or look after their loved ones. And the stats don't lie that knife crime all too often in major cities is peaked when it's involving young people just at the end of a school day between 3 and 5 o'clock, as I've seen in some studies. So we need to really grab hold of this situation, announce this fantastic thing. I know it costs money. I'm fully aware that Treasury will be rolling their eyes at me yet again because I'm asking for more funds. But this is something that long term we see money back in, because we've got confident young people, healthy young people who aren't needing to access health services in the current way they're doing now, and feeling much more confident and having that aspiration to go and achieve. Thank you, Mr. Hosey.
Mr. Shannon.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And can I first of all thanks to the honourable gentleman for Elsbury for bringing it forward, for really enthusing in his introduction for us all to be part of. I'm very pleased as well to see the Shadow Minister in his place, and look very much forward to the Minister's response. The Minister, of course, has physically shown that he can do this, because I remember the Minister when he was just a slightly more broader, what we say, and what he is today. So I think the Minister, yeah, well, there you are. He must have been very much broader, and I was looking at it that way. But again, it's lovely to see the Minister in his place. I know that his contribution and answers will be excellent. My contribution, Mr. Chairman, will reflect the Northern Ireland perspective. It always does, but we will reflect that because what we're doing back in Northern Ireland as well. I can say what a pleasure it is, as always, to follow the honourable gentleman for Stoke on Trent North. I think we've now found his weakness, Mr. Chairman. I know we often thought in the chamber that whenever the Speaker spoke to him, it was threatened his mother. We now know the right person to bring the threat upon him. So I think I will maybe just text that to Mr. Speaker now and say, the teacher you want is this man. You know, so beware about what may happen in the chamber for the future. I declare an interest as a type 2 diabetic. Didn't set out to be a type 2 diabetic at school. My reason for that was I had Chinese carryouts 4 or 5 times a week with 2 bottles of Coca-Cola. Never a good recipe for keeping thin and trim. Realised only a year after probably that I was a diabetic for probably a long period of time. But the point I make that is because whenever I first started life, and I love, I mean, I can go back further than most in this chamber, back to school, go back to the 60s and the early 70s. I realised that my type 2 diabetes greatly impacted the way and I think about the benefits of PE. Because as a child at school, we were a very sporty school. I was thin and wiry, always a good runner, loved rugby and loved cricket. And sport was an integral part of where we are. But I always was aware of this as well at school. And I speak personally. There was always the child, the other child maybe, it was a boys' school, so it was all boys at the school. But at the end of it all, there was the child who was picked last when you were picking a team. He came in last as well and was the last out of the changing room. And that was something that I learned to observe and to see how do we encourage. The fact is, he always turned up. They always turned up for the classes for the sport, but he didn't seem to really get enthused about it. I learned to swim at school, and I'm glad I did because I've always been a fairly strong swimmer. And I understand why they asked their parents to write them notes, as they often did, to get them out of what they perceived to be a humiliation. And yet the importance of a healthy lifestyle must be in place from a young age. So times have changed in the world of PE. In my day, a sports hall was used. Star jumps were employed along with the dreaded rope. I'm going to probably age myself when people think of that in the films at school. Now Naomi, my speechwriter, very busy speechwriter, tells me that her 6-year-old came home to say she was doing a month of Monday football in school as an additional day of PE. And there are no complaints. There's extra PE. And I'm not quite sure how they enthuse the children of the day. And I'm going to give another example of that as well. But they certainly do it back home. And it seems to be working. And that's the important thing about it. Because that wee girl is not one bit bothered about doing the extra PE. She is absolutely bouncing, literally bouncing physically as well. So what a tremendous way to encourage young boys and girls to be involved in exercise that is interesting and exciting. My eldest granddaughter, who's 12, coming 13, she was never really very much sporty and persuaded. She was more into her laptop and contacting her friends and all. But then this year, everything has changed. She now she attends Strangford Integrated College in Cardore, and Mike is sitting in Strangford, and she's on the girls' football team. She has lost weight, and it's really tremendous to watch a wee girl that I actually was quite surprised, but she's enthused with the sport. I think she's in training, and that's probably one of the things as well. And it's another way of engaging with your friends, as the Honourable Lady referred to, by the way, for children at a young age. And the other thing is, now, the football must be, I would call it the strategy seems to be all or nothing. She lost their first game 7-0, won their second game 6-0. So they go all out to score goals or all out to prevent them. To me, this is where we must take in school exciting, inclusive exercise to tackle the lure of the stationary computer and tablet. Get them away from that. Get them onto a physical focus and do it. Days have changed when your mum and dad, and it happened to me, threw you out into the street to play under the street lights until the street lights came on. Parents are understandably concerned about not knowing where their child is, so things are slightly different today as well. Most parents working all day are unable to come home and take them to the park to play when they have to make dinner, do the housework, do the homeworks as well. And the natural thing is that kids stay safe inside playing their games. But if you can engage them through the schools, through the local sports clubs, and you can make them be absolutely energetic and keen as they are, then I believe we can move in the right direction. But But whilst this is completely understandable, it's not ideal. I'm thankful that schools are stepping up and putting on additional physical activity, and indeed primary schools as well. In my constituency, at a very young age now, and I'm glad to see that, will now start their day with what is called the Daily Mile. The Honourable Gentleman referred to it. It's really incredible, Mr. Chairman, because you see all the kids wanting to do the Daily Mile. They walk along with their friends from school. They can chat the whole way around, but they do their Daily Mile, and it becomes now almost an everyday occurrence to do that. And they can also walk at a pace set with a teacher who sets a pace that they're able to cope with. And this is an enjoyable form of exercise, and teaching our children we can make this a part of their daily life. People sometimes ask me, the guys in the chamber, sometimes the security men always say to me, Jimmy, are you doing any running over the weekend? I said, no, there's 3 stages. There's running, there's walking, and then there's dandering. I'm in the dander category. I take my strolls at my leisure. I'm well by the stage of those other ones. I concluded with this, Mr. Chairman, I understand the time's of the essence. Obesity is an increasingly common problem in Northern Ireland, and as it is across the whole of the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland, and every 5 children aged 2 to 5 are classified as obese. So we've got a real problem. But we have a way of addressing it, and Honourable Gentleman and others who have spoken who have said how they can do it. And change the story. And the sugar tax and the smaller chocolate bars are a good step, but exercise is the way we want to go. So we have achieving this, and school has a vital role to play in all of us. And more PE with interesting exercise and hobbies is a wonderful way and a wonderful step for each region in the UK to prioritise. I'm very pleased to support the Honourable Gentleman for Edisbury. I look very much forward to the shadow, and more importantly, if I can say this, to the Minister. Thank you.
Stephen Morgan.
Under your chairmanship, Mr Hosey, and I want to start by thanking the Honourable Member for Edisbury for securing an important debate on an issue which I believe is vital to the future of young people and to our country. And I think it's clear from contributions made today that members from across the House agree that physical education and sport is an important part of curriculum, and I think it's been a really good-spirited debate. Specifically, I want to recognise the remarks of the Honourable Member for Edisbury, who spoke passionately about the importance of physical education, and I want to thank him for his efforts and his leadership in the task group. He described that some people perceive PE as being a nice-to-have rather than an integral part of the curriculum, and the impact that PE has on health and well-being. And my honourable friend for Batley and Spen showed her usual passion and energy. She actually demonstrates on every single issue she raises here in Parliament, but obviously has huge experience coming from the education sector. She talked about PE needing a greater priority and the skills that it gains for young people so that they can succeed and flourish and also make friends. Of course, we know the pandemic has caused unprecedented disruption to children's academic learning, but it is also important to recognise the impact of the lack of opportunities pupils have had to participate in organised team sports and physical education too. Chair, I'm sure colleagues from across the House will also share concerns about the combined impacts of limited opportunities for sport and exercise. Being locked indoors for the past 2 years, that has had a significant impact on young people's mental health and well-being. Sport England's survey published in December showed that only 45% of children and young people, equivalent to 3.2 million pupils, achieve the Chief Medical Officer's guidelines for taking part in sport and physical activity for an average of 60 minutes or more a day. Worse still, 32% did an average of less than 30 minutes per day. Crucially, though, these guidelines were similar to ambitions set out in the government's own school, sport and activity plan of 2019. And I quote, that all children should have access to 60 minutes of physical activity every day. Government previously stated that it would publish an update on its plan this year, but despite its targets, it's still nowhere to be seen. Even with the government's record over the last 2 years, the state of it prior to the pandemic cannot be forgotten about and simply swept under the carpet. Chair, according to the Taking Part survey covering the period April to 2019 to March 2020, just 65% of 5 to 15-year-olds had participated in competitive sport in school in the previous 12 months. Meanwhile, the percentage of 5 to 10-year-olds who had played sport in their school in organised competitions was only 58%. So I ask the Minister today, in his response, if he will commit to his department publishing an update on its school sport and activity plan. And specifically, will he set out what action he will be taking to address government's failure to meet its own objectives for all children to have access to 60 minutes of physical activity every day? Chair, the pandemic has caused widespread disruption to children's learning, including PE and sport. But government cannot use COVID as a smokescreen to shroud a decade of failure to provide proper access to the physical education and sport students need and deserve. If ministers won't deliver for our children, the next Labour government will.
Will Quince, Minister.
Thank you, Mr Hosey. It's a pleasure to serve under your chairmanship. And let me firstly thank my honourable friend, the member for Edisbury, on securing a debate on this very important subject. And I'm aware that this is a subject very close to my honourable friend's heart, and I'm grateful for him for his efforts thus far, of course, including, as he mentioned, as chair of the Association of the PE Taskforce, to promote the importance of the curriculum subject. And I'd also like to, the first opportunity I've been able to do so at the metaphorical dispatch box, to thank him for all his work as one of my predecessors as Minister for Children and Families. I'd also like to thank all members, Mr Hosey, for their constructive and passionate contributions to this important debate today. As my honourable friend alluded to, we run together most Tuesday mornings, and we have therefore had the benefit of discussing this and many other issues at great length. And my honourable friend knows I am a relatively new convert to running. In truth, I am a relatively new convert to exercise full stop. But both running and exercise have become now a passion. In truth, I was not keen on playing sport at school. I didn't enjoy playing sport in school. People didn't encourage me to play sport in school. I was one of the children picked last, as I remember Strangford alluded to in his speech. I wasn't very good at sport, in truth. And the main reason, I lacked confidence. Now, PE, sport and physical activity have a significant importance in keeping children healthy and for the positive impact they can have on a child's health and well-being. The reason I mention my own personal experience is because, importantly, it builds confidence. Now, schools should be aware of the difference that high-quality PE can make to a school. That's why PE is right at the heart of the national curriculum. In fact, the only foundation subject which is compulsory across all 4 key stages of the national curriculum. But as my honourable friend knows, I know that he shares my passion in this area and a desire for us to go further and faster. Why? Yes, because health and fitness and well-being and mental health and mental well-being are really, really important. But also about confidence, as I said, and about camaraderie, as the Honourable Lady the Member for Batford and Spen pointed out, around teamwork, around leadership skills. They all come with taking part in competitive sport. So why now? Well, now because, as been alluded to by my honourable friend, the Member for Stoke-on-Trent North, we have an obesity crisis. And we know it's a growing issue, pardon the pun, with childhood obesity. Obesity is now a bigger cause of cancer than smoking. And although it is not the only solution, it is a part. And PE, sport and physical activity can and should play its part in tackling that. Equally important, of course, is diet and nutrition, but setting behaviour and habits around physical activity early in life, and importantly, as part of family life, and my honourable friend alluded to this about what you see your parents doing and doing things with your parents, it's vital because you take those with you into adult life. These habits, these behaviours stay with you, and then they're seen by your children, so they develop them too, and they are seen as normal. But key to this is high-quality PE at the earliest age at school. And that's key to allowing children to learn and develop key skills that will, coming back to that point, give them the confidence to take part in physical activity and competitive sport. And as my honourable friend alluded to, I genuinely believe, and there is evidence to suggest this is the case, that it also enhances academic performance. Now, I could say that everything is rosy and that this happens for all children and they get excellent PE teaching at primary school. But the truth is that isn't the case. And I know that from my own experience, and I know that from the experience of many young people that I've spoken with. In truth, the teaching of PE is done very, very well in many schools up and down the country, but it is inconsistent. And in particular in primary, there is an issue with teachers lacking the confidence themselves to teach PE effectively. Too often it's outsourced, as we know, and as great as rugby and football coaching is in and of itself, that is not PE. That is not giving children the confidence and life skills that will then lead them to take part in competitive sport. And I am determined, Mr. Hosey, to address this. Now, my honourable friend has called for PE to be made a core subject. Now, he rightly pointed out there is no curriculum review underway at the moment, but I am very sympathetic to the case that he makes and the arguments that he makes, and I will raise these at length with the schools minister. At the heart of this debate, notwithstanding the request and call made by my honourable friend, is the challenge to make sure that PE is a subject that is taken seriously by all schools and done brilliantly, consistently, everywhere across our country. And this is vital so that all children have the chance to develop the fundamental physical literacy that they need so that they can go on to live an active, healthy life and to experience different types of sport so that they are enthused and that they have the confidence to do so. And that's why I'm clear on the importance of PE as a curriculum subject. And as I said, it's the only foundation subject taught across all key stages, making it a requirement that it's taught to children of all ages. And I can assure all honourable members across the House that the government places significant importance on the delivery of PE lessons. But notwithstanding that, given the challenges facing schools, this was alluded to by my honourable friend, the spokesman for the official opposition, with the recovery from COVID underway, we do remain wary of making technical changes to the curriculum now in a way that places additional burdens on teacher workloads and training requirements by introducing changes. And this is something that is particularly relevant as schools start to recover from the pandemic. But, having said that, it's also the case, as I referenced my honourable friend's Taskforce report, that PE and sport are vital also to recovery. And we want to focus on what we can do to build on what is already in place to help make sure that PE is taught really, really well in schools. So I can confirm that we remain committed to our manifesto commitments to support the effective use of school sports facilities, to invest in primary school PE teaching and the promotion of physical literacy and competitive sport. And to confirm this, my honourable friend rightly pointed to the £30 million a year towards opening up school sport facilities in England, as well as to promote and improve the quality of teaching of physical education in primary schools. And we'll build on that £10.1 million, which has supported schools to reopen their sports facilities after the pandemic and increase opportunities for children and young people across England to take part in sport. So what have we done to improve PE so far? So to help primary schools make improvements to the quality of PE and the support that they offer, we've introduced the primary PE and sports premium in 2013, I think under my honourable friend's tenure. That has, over the past few years, I think since its introduction, that represents £1.6 billion for the PE and sports premium, with the funding since 2017 having doubled to £320 million a year. And we're considering arrangements for the primary PE and sport premium for the 2022-23 academic year, a point made by my honourable friend, the member for Stoke-on-Trent North. I desperately want to give that long-term certainty of funding, and all I can say is I'm working very closely with the Department for Health and Social Care to try and enable us to do that as soon as possible. And we're currently considering, Mr Hosey, a series of approaches as to how we can bring together the evidence on what constitutes really good PE and how this can be practically delivered and how to support schools to identify and take the steps they need to make their provision as good as it can be. My honourable friend referenced the school sports and activity plan. We remain committed to the ambitions we set in the school sport and activity action plan, and we will publish an update to the plan later this year to align with our publication of the new sports strategy. And that action plan update will not only cover ground lost during COVID-19 restrictions, but will boost momentum to deliver an action plan for all pupils, regardless of their background. Coming to a conclusion, Mr Hosey, I just want to assure my honourable friend that notwithstanding what I've said, which I appreciate is lukewarm and it is complex, I am really ambitious about what we can do in this space. Ambitious about going further around PE and school sport and physical activity in schools. I'm ambitious about expanding the holiday activities and food programme, which we've now committed to for a further 3 years as part of the spending review. £200 million per year, 600,000 children took part in those activities up and down our country over the last year. I'm exploring whether we could be a Daily Mile nation. And I have to warn you all that that is not just for schools. That is everyone. And I think we can do it, but I'm pushing in the right direction. I'm exploring a summer activity challenge, something similar to the summer reading challenge, so we can get kids moving and taking part in sports and activities over the summer holidays. So the ambition is there. The work is ongoing. And I hope that my honourable friend and members across this House present today are assured that we are determined to achieve the same thing in this area. Every school teaching PE well and every pupil benefiting from it, wherever they are up and down our country. And we'll work with Ofsted, with schools, with sporting bodies and PE teachers on the further steps we'll be taking to achieve exactly that. Thank you, Mr. Hosey.
Yeah. Edward Timpson to sum up.
Thank you very much, Mr. Hosey. Can I thank all honourable members who contributed to this debate this afternoon. I'm conscious that, although I can't speak for the Labour Party, I know there's been a one-line whip circulating around for an hour or two, which may explain why some very enthusiastic members who would otherwise be here have found some more pressing engagement. But I think it's, if nothing else, the quality of the debate has been extremely high, and it's ensured that we've really brought to the fore the key aspects of what make PE such a crucial part of school life. And I think my honourable friend the Minister was underplaying, I think, his hand a little by saying he was lukewarm in his response. I think he's actually very enthusiastic and gives me a lot of hope for what is to come, both within school but also surrounding schools in the community. So what I would say to him is, and to Her Majesty's Government in their entirety, because I appreciate there'll be other departments that are involved in some of these decisions, that actually moving PE to a core status isn't just a technical change. It would change the whole way it is seen within the school system. It will no longer be able to be an afterthought, and every school will have to engage and think hard about how they deliver that high-quality physical education we want to see right across the board. And I'm pleased that he shares my ambition in that regard of going further and faster in this area, and that he's sympathetic to the arguments that we put forward today in relation to PE as a core subject. But of course, I acknowledge, as I did in my speech, that there is still some work to do in order to satisfy perhaps not just ourselves but everyone who needs to be party to that decision, that all the building blocks are in place so it becomes a plausible, effective and long-term change that we can rely upon within schools. And to that end, I would be pleased if I could continue to work with him and his department on how we start to build the capacity within the system and develop some of the assessment and accountability measures that will be necessary to satisfy everybody who has a vested interest that the children who we are putting through our school system are reaping all the benefits that education can give. We know in the very best schools, as I said, that this has already been happening for a long time, and I still come across some very inspiring leadership within physical education, but it simply isn't happening everywhere often enough. And this is a real opportunity off the back of COVID to get some, to shine a light on a part of the school system which I think has been kept in the dark for too long. It has a huge part to play in moving our country forward in both the fulfilment of a happy and long and healthy life for more of our citizens, but also making sure that our education system is performing at the highest possible level. Because ultimately, this isn't just about making sure that children come out healthy at the end, as important that is. We also want them to reach their potential, emotionally, mentally, academically. PE can tick all those boxes, Mr. Hosey, and whenever you discover the benefits of exercise in your life, you never turn back. So let's make sure that more children find that out much earlier.
The question is that this House has considered physical education as a core subject in schools. As many as are of that opinion say aye. Aye. The contrary no. The ayes have it. The ayes have it. Order, order. The sitting stands adjourned.